am here today with Susan Steinbrecher, internationally acclaimed businesswoman, executive coach, speaker, author, who is the president and CEO of Steinbrecher and Associates here in Dallas, which is a management consulting firm that provides professional development services in the areas of executive coaching, group facilitation, and leadership training. And, let me just list off some of your clients, Susan, because it's a very impressive list. Bank of America, Diageo, Capital One, CVS Caremark, Brinker. It keeps going just like that. It's a fairly impressive list. She is also the author of 2 books here. First one was HeartCentered Leadership, and the newer one, I believe, is Roadmap to Success with Ken Blanchard and Stephen Covey, and we're thrilled to have you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you.
Thanks for joining me. So we're going to be talking a bit first about heart-centered leadership. Mm-hmm. So why don't we start out by explaining what heart-centered leadership is?
Great question. People never know what that means, right? Basically, what heart-centered leadership is about, if you think of a classic management person, this is somebody that, command and control and plan, organize, direct, that type of behavior, tactical behavior. Leaders are more inspiring and visionary, and what heart-centered leader is taking that leader position to a whole nother level. This is somebody who leads with transparency, authenticity, open communication, truth-telling, that type of style. And it's someone who knows that if I really take good care of my associates, they'll take great care of my clients, which will take great care of my business profitability. So that's it in a nutshell.
So there's 3 characteristics that at least 3 of heart-centered leadership.
Right.
What are those? And
authenticity, being totally authentic, transparent, that real transparency, that, again, open conversation, and then really this whole communication aspect. This is somebody that knows that through communication, we will build this business together. And honestly, we could have even called the book Heart-Centered Living, because these principles apply that are outlined in the book just as well at home as they do in a work setting.
I know that you advise corporate CEOs and high-level managers at these big companies, but if you were talking to an individual investor or the person who's listening to this radio show, what do they need to get out of this idea of heart-centered leadership, or is it really for us in the industry that we need to understand it?
It might be both, right? I mean, it might be within their own situation, within their family, having open and honest dialogue around, this is our financial state within our company, and no, we're not going to be able to go on 16 different vacations this year, and here's why. And to actually tell the truth and talk about that and say, what can we do collectively as a family to get through these tough times? So that's one aspect of it. There are also perhaps leaders in businesses, which the same thing translates. How are you communicating with associates about where this organization is and where you need their help? And then certainly with your customers and clients listening, I mean, I don't know, but I would think I would want to work with people that are open and honest and transparent and authentic, especially now more than ever. The trust factor, to your point in that article, has significantly gone down. It's like people feel like I've trusted you. I've invested my earnings and my future and my retirement and everything else into certain people, and they're dramatically being let down. No one can predict everything that's going to happen in the market, but at least if there is this conversation that takes place to say, here's what's happening and here's what we recommend we do moving forward, that's what people are looking for right now. They're looking for that advice, that help.
Let's take the flip side. What happens when you don't practice?
Oh, that's great. Well, people go into more fear, which is primarily what's happening here too. People go into more fear. The grapevine takes over because no one is talking from the top. And so they're creating their own story about what could be happening. They're impacted so much by what they're hearing in the media in terms of, they're scared. I mean, they're scared. I mean, is this really different than ever before? Or times that different? All the messaging that they're getting. So they're hungry for somebody to say to them, here's exactly the picture we need to paint in this company. Here's where I need your help. Tap into that productivity, tap into the innovation and creativity. People can't be very innovative and creative when they're scared.
Yes.
So if you don't deal with that aspect first,
right,
and say, how are you feeling? What's going on? How are you impacted with the financial environment right now? And what are we going to do collectively to work through that?
It's interesting because you just said something that struck me. As you know, part of our practice, we very much believe in addressing three areas. One, the knowledge of our clients.
Right.
Two is to give them sound strategies. But the third is there is a behavioral component to investing, and the need for someone to be there for you, to help you understand when you're making illogical decisions or rash decisions or so. And when you said about people making up their own story, what struck me about that was, the amount of calls that we got during when the crisis was just full pitch, and people hearing, bits and pieces in the news and taking that and blowing it up.
Oh gosh. So
huge, and then starting to make financial decisions based on these stories, these horror
worst case scenarios
that they had created in their mind.
Yes.
And I felt like we were doing a lot of talking. I mean, there was a point where I was sending out, voice messages to our clients on almost a weekly basis.
Right.
And but no, and what I think I learned from that is too much can never be enough, right?
Never can never communicate.
But isn't it interesting how we create these boogie monsters under the bed when nobody's talking to us?
That's right, exactly. And when you're not, they will fill the void.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's usually never positive. I mean, it's usually the worst case scenario, because they do hear about the neighbor or the family member that did lose their job. Yes, but it's not in perspective. And I mean, are there challenging times? Of course.
Yes.
But it's not, they catastrophize is what happens. And so I'm sure you run into that, of course, with your clients. They're catastrophizing, I guess,
Yes.
whatever, the situation and making it so much worse than it really is. And then they do all the irrational decision making, to your point.
So there's two things. From my perspective, it's talk,
Right.
obviously, honestly, and authentically
Yes.
to your clients.
Yes.
But the other thing is, for the person listening, is to be aware that you will have a tendency to create these stories and react irrationally. And how do you counterbalance that? If I feel like I'm about to make a decision that is driven by fear or greed rather than logic, what do I do? How do I identify that I'm about to do that? And
well, first of all, identify how you're feeling. If it's not positive, then you're running. I mean, really, if you're in joy and happiness,
Yes.
Okay, we don't have an issue. When I'm feeling scared, when I'm feeling panicky, when I'm feeling anxious, when all of that is beginning to happen. Well, think about it. What helps people move through that? Usually it's information. So even though you, in your case, do a fabulous job of communicating with your clients, well, even if they feel like, yes, I'm hearing often, if it's not enough for you, then you need to reach out and get more, right? So go to your trusted advisor and ask. Rather than pick up the latest article or the latest clip in the media that said something that has nothing to do with who you are, your demographic, your psychographic, or any of that, and taking that and applying it. It's not your world. It's that person's world they're featuring. So only someone like your organization that knows that client can do that. They know the situation to help
and that's
them.
the other problem, too, isn't it? Isn't the press a very big part of this problem?
Yes, it is. And they have their job to do, but that's what people don't realize is it's a business, okay? And their business is to get headlines, and their business is to get viewership. So usually the positive news doesn't gain a lot of viewership. So what do? They find that one tag,
that one situation.
Story. I mean, I can't tell you how many times. A storm came through Dallas, and my mother calls me and says, "Oh my gosh, you're flooded." I'm like, "It's not even raining here. What are you talking about?"
My mother does the same thing.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's not even raining." And so she, I said, "Oh, come on. Now by now they took that one part of the entire Metroplex, filmed it, and said, this is what's happening." So people need to really get realistic about what's happening out there. It's a business. They're doing their job. Take it with a grain of salt. When you find yourself getting anxious and nervous and concerned, and you find yourself ready to make decisions in that state of mind, not the best state of mind to be making decisions, by the way, but when you catch yourself enough to know you are, that's when you really have to reach out and get information from a trusted source, and not necessarily from the latest article in the magazine or on the news, because it's not your world. It's those people's world.